Morning. Morning. How you guys doing? Thanks for getting up so early. I know it's 9 a.m. on a Sunday, and, well, it was a really nice party last night that I didn't get to see much of. So my name is Michael View, and this lovely gentleman is Kevin Bong. See, you got, look at that, huh? So we're going to talk about routers today, Dropboxes particularly, but a little bit about ourselves real quick. I'm a penetration tester, have been for a couple years now. Otherwise work on hardware stuff, all kinds of various projects and things. The current maintainer. It's not ice, don't worry. Oh, thank God. You scared me there for a second. I wasn't looking at you. I'm the current maintainer of the P0wn project.
I'm Kevin Bos. I do the same things Michael does, and I started the P0wn project a few years ago. Sorry. I'm Kevin Bos. I do a lot of the same things Michael does, and I started the P0wn project a few years ago, and a lot of what we'll talk about today is kind of based on some of that and diverging from some of that as well.
So this shameless company plug that they make us put on all of our slide decks. So we're members of SICH LLP. 403 Labs is a subdivision of that. So basically what we do is QSA and PCI assessments, a lot of P2PE and things like that. I'm a pen tester for their team, so I do a lot of penetration tests for PCI compliance and non-PCI compliance. Kevin obviously does similar things as us as well. We do all kinds of stuff. We're an ASV scanner and a PCI forensics investigating team as well. So if you are in the need of any of those services, look us up. Shameless plug over. So what this talk is really going to be about is, you go out into the field on a penetration test and you don't have a Dropbox with you. Either you forgot to pack one or you're traveling long distances. And you can't pack everything, right? We like to try, but you can't bring everything. So what do? You go into, you're doing your recon late at night, and you figure out, boy, a Dropbox would be great, right? So how do you build one on the fly?
Michael, what is a Dropbox for those of us that don't know?
Getting there.
We were talking about it. Sorry.
Man. Hi, Mr. Chris Jones. I didn't know you showed up today. So we're going to talk about what we need to do and where you can find some of the things. So yes, we're going to talk about Dropboxes, hardware, practicality, and all that other good stuff. So a Dropbox, I guess I didn't define a Dropbox, but a Dropbox basically is a small portable router, such as these wonderful little toys we have up here. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Primarily, they're going to run some kind of Linux distribution. We focus mostly on OpenWrt. There's lots of great tools out there. I think probably TP-Link is probably the biggest brand that they support, but there's lots of different ones, D-Link, Linksys, all kinds of routers out there. But they're great little boxes. Normally they'll have at least a wireless adapter and one Ethernet adapter, so they're good to stick under chairs, put in lobbies, put behind things, and get them jacked into the network and give yourself a remote access point into that network, which we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. So we like to use them mostly on covert, like black box social engineering engagements, where we'll drop them off and we'll just do random network sniffing. Look at what's on the network, see if we can maybe do some detection, see if we can find any hashes floating around, anything like that. And most importantly, I think they should be cheap. Because if you're on a black box engagement or social engineering engagement, there's a possibility that someone's going to find it and throw it away, right? Or keep it for themselves. So we don't want them to be several $100s, because that would make me cry a little bit if I lost one. You don't want to see me cry. So to find the hardware, I like to say you have to think outside the box to find your box. So we found, yeah, these are the jokes. This is as good as it gets. So local stores, obviously Walmart, Target. We found a lot at Fry's Electronics, actually. But we also found one off of Craigslist, which was great. Was able to get that in about an hour with communicating with the guy. Found some at, Kevin found some at Goodwill. I didn't have a chance to hit up any good rummage sales in my area. We're from Wisconsin, so it wasn't wasn't a lot of rummage sales, but flea markets as well. So depending on where you're at, think about secondhand routers, because that's all you really need, right? You get one for $25, $30.
And actually, the secondhand routers a lot of times are working out better because the newest routers often don't have a new firmware, open firmware for them yet, whereas the ones you find in rummage sales, if they support it, they probably have a firmware ready.
That's a good point. So this was probably the hardest part because we're men and we had to go shopping. So we did a little exploration and found out several different routers at a lot of different places. Like I said, we've got some at all over the place. So one of the biggest problems you'll find that not all routers run on battery power. So we did some experiments with that and found that actually 2 9-volts or 4 9-volts, however many you got, works extremely well. So what we did is, you can see in the picture on the right-hand side, we took the cable the power cable that came with the router, and cut it up, and we could just chain a couple of 9 volts together and actually make a really good power supply out of it. 4 AA's worked for Kevin. Didn't really work well for me because they were round and they kept falling off the router, and trying to tape round things to a flat surface is not easy. The big 6-volt in the back worked extremely well, but that's for one of those camping lights, so it's like this big, so it's not exactly inconspicuous. But it worked. It worked for a very long time, actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, so a key thing on here, the routers, I'll say like input 12 volts, but if you actually crack it open and look at the chip that's the power converter, you can figure out that, well, that chip actually works anywhere from 7 volts to 20 volts or something like that. So you just need some voltage in that range. And yeah, as Michael said, I think every router we had, except for the 5-volt ones, were fine at 9 volts, so the 9-volt batteries worked well.
Yeah, I think one of the problems was the 6-volt input from the 4 AA's. I was having issues with that, but it worked oddly well with the lantern battery.
Yeah, and that was kind of cool, because one of our big goals was, can I get like one trip to Walmart and walk out with everything I need for a Dropbox, or maybe a couple trips, and so saying I could get electrical tape. I'm skipping ahead here.
You're skipping ahead.
Okay, if I can get everything at Walmart, it's cool.
Payback's a bitch. So we did some power testing on those. These are all running off a battery. You'll notice next to the router we have the type of voltage used. So some of these have internal batteries, so we couldn't really test those very well. 9 volts and 5 volts. So we've got running, load peak, and watts as far as some power output for you to look at.
Yeah. Which again was really cool. A lot of the routers, they come with a 1 amp power adapter, and you're like, oh, I can't run something on a battery that draws an amp. But if you actually look, it's only drawing 100 milliamps, 1/10 of that. So if you do a little math on how much power is in a 9-volt battery. Do we have a slide on?
Thank you for that shameless plug.
So the question was, how long will they actually run?
So we experimented on, I picked one because, well, batteries are not exactly cheap, especially 9 volts if you ever bought them. They're kind of crazy expensive. So I just picked on one router, this guy actually, the WR842. And you can see here the cost and the runtime and how the batteries were set up. So.
Yeah. And a key thing here, so this router had like a 200 milliamp pull. So if you're using one of these littler travel routers, you probably get almost twice as much time off the same battery. These travel routers with the battery built in that we didn't really test because we couldn't, I think the 3040 that I don't actually see, oh, we got one here, that one will run like 10, 12 hours, I think, on the internal battery. Yeah. This one, when we started driving down on Thursday, I turned it on and started Kismet sniffing. And just left it on the whole weekend. It died sometime yesterday evening. So internal battery ran for Thursday morning till last night.
Yeah, if you can find one of those, obviously that's the gold, right? That's the mothership. You've got the battery already built in. You don't have to do anything else, which is nice. So this isn't really too big of a surprise, and I'm not going to read this all to you, but the different routers that we tested essentially are extremely comparable as far as CPU, RAM. But I think the biggest thing you're going to want to look for is if it has a battery or if it supports a USB drive. One of the things we can do, obviously, with the USB drive is expand the internal memory capabilities of it, right? Because normally these have 4 or 8 megs worth of memory, and if we can put a 16 gig card in it, that's better.
There's an error on this slide.
Yes,
I have a prize for whoever Anybody figures it out? That RAM column should say flash. That's
Well,
the
you didn't
amount
give
of
them a
flash
lot of
space.
time, did you?
Sorry.
You want your
We
own-
don't. We're moving fast, Michael.
Are you
we
sure?
have demos, and if we
Holy
go slow, we won't be able to do that.
Every day. I work with this every day. So, signal strength. We did some signal strength measurements. That's our lovely building there at Sikich. That picture was taken back from where I was standing with an alpha and a 5 dB antenna. It's kind of hard to see, but essentially we were on the third floor, maybe about this window-ish in and back here. So pretty much in the center of the building, we put these routers right here on one of the cubicles. And we went outside and went ahead and set up our alpha and was able to get access to pretty much all the ones that we tested. So pretty good range even for something with a built-in antenna.
Yeah, so this is the 3040.
That's not a 3040.
Oh no, this is
It's a
the
3040.
13. This is the 13U.
Yeah,
That's the 3040. So
The
yeah, these
3040.
little ones.
yeah, extremely comparable. Obviously, this one was pretty good because it has.
Michael's in love with this router.
It's my new favorite toy.
He's a lonely man.
I am. So we did some practicality tests. Excuse me. No. Did some practicality tests and tried to figure out where can we actually hide these things, right? Because that's part of being a Dropbox is we have to put them in a covert location. So I'm sure you've all seen these little things before on top of conference tables, right? Little plug and stuff. Well, these actually work really well. This little guy, it's the Nexus, fits in there almost perfectly, and it's got USB and Ethernet and everything, or power and Ethernet and everything right in the little slot. So we just stick that in there with the cords and you're gold. Not many people use them in our office, so it'd probably sit there for quite some time. We also found, obviously, behind the copy machine is great, and we've expanded what a colleague of mine called the Internet of Things, and we plugged one into a plant. So I don't think that would be suspicious at all in this day and age. Maybe make the LEDs light it up or something.
It was surprisingly easy to hide these big rummage sale routers in the office in completely inconspicuous places.
So the build process. Yeah, I think we're fine. So the build process, what you're going to need, obviously, the router, some batteries. Black tape is the most user-friendly. And of course, if you don't have a wire cutters, you can't find one at Walmart. We found utility knives work, in a pinch, scissors. But as far as most of these routers go, they fall under this category. You can install OpenWrt from the web interface. So you just open up the web interface of the router and you go in and reflash the firmware and download the correct image from OpenWrt's website. And you get it flashed, and you install the packages you want, and you're done. It's very straightforward. Some of the routers were a little bit more difficult. Again, like the 842, because with this one, I found that it does have a 5-port switch on the back. So if you want to take advantage of that, what I've done is I went out to OpenWrt, downloaded the correct package, flashed it. I was able to back up two of the config files, the network and the wireless configs. I was able to, because it's got a USB port on it, so I put a 8 gig USB stick in it. I could put the mini power overlay package on it that is on the site and expand the memory, so now it's got 8 megs of internal storage. And then I can just replace these two network and wireless files, and I have access back to the 5-port switch, which is really handy. The Linksys that we bought didn't seem to make it today. Found this on Craigslist for $30, which wasn't bad. Got them down to 25 in a couple of emails. Picked it up and was able to flash it that afternoon. So it was very convenient. It was really close to our office, so got that. The only problem with such an old router is I did have to go back to Backfire, and that's a pretty old package for OpenWrt. So it didn't have a lot of capability, but it would let me on the network. It was an access point. I could get in, maybe use it as a pivot, something like that. So it worked. Unfortunately, not everything does work. This was a Netgear 300 that I got didn't really take well. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to flash a Netgear router before. The instructions are fairly convoluted on the site, and you have to go through a lot of different steps, and it did not make it. So that's its memorial service.
And ideally, if you're out doing this and you find a 3040 or something like this from TP-Link, it's awesome because it's got a USB port, it's got the battery in, and you just put the firmware on and you're ready to go. But if you're in a pinch, like we're saying in this talk, that's maybe not likely the case. You know, the couple that I found were, I found the WRT 160N, it's kind of like a 54G, found that at Goodwill, found this other On Networks one at Micro Center on clearance. But the thing about both of these is on both of those, when I tried to flash them, the flashing failed. On both of them, they didn't have a battery. On both of them, they didn't have a USB port. You know, we're really in a pinch. If the flashing fails through the web interface, it's not the end of the world. Most of these devices have an internal serial port. I'm not going to go through the steps for serial flashing, but just to not be afraid of it. What you do need, though, is a TTL serial adapter. I've got a picture of one there. You know, if you want to get into hardware hacking, go buy one of these now. They're only $2. But it lets you talk between a computer and a computerized router serial device using serial protocols. If you don't have one of those and you need one in a pinch, and you're like, I'm never going to find that at Radio Shack or something, there is a hack. And the hack is, an Arduino can be used as a TTL serial adapter. Certain Arduinos, most of the Arduinos, and those are the Arduinos that have that same FTDI serial adapter chip on them, things like the Nano, things like the standard Arduino Uno. All you need to do is short the ground, or short the reset pin to ground, and that puts the CPU of the Arduino in kind of a completely turned off state, more or less, and you just use the serial adapter on it then to connect through it. And I think I've got a picture of that. But before I can do that, I need to find the serial ports on the router. And again, most of these routers I'm finding do have serial ports on the inside. They're not too hard to find. You Google on the internet and somebody else has already taken a picture. So on the left-hand side there is the N150. It actually had a row of pins with already the pins in place. I just had to find on the internet which pin was ground, which was TX and RX. The 160N, this black one here, did not have pins, but it had little pads, and the internet knew what those pads were, which of those pads were RX and TX, so I just had to solder on my own wires. Again, hard to do if you're like trying to do it at night from Walmart or something, but if you got a little more time or got a soldering iron, you can do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because obviously you need a soldering iron and solder or things like that, right? So yeah. You can do it because you can find that stuff at usually Walmart or Sears or somewhere, but it's going to cost you a little bit more than $40.
And here's a real quick picture of, you know, doing a serial flash using an Arduino. So I got the computer, connected the Arduino. The green cable there is connecting the ground to the reset pin, which tells the Arduino CPU to turn off. But now my Arduino is acting like a USB to serial adapter, and I've got this 3 wires for RX, TX, and ground. And then I'm not going to go through the instructions to flash. They're different for every different router, but most of the routers do have them out there. It's not that scary. Don't be afraid to do it.
So to actually build the thing, we'll need a laptop. I threw on with an Ethernet port on there because all the new Ultrabooks don't come with Ethernet, as I've discovered in a recent issue. Network cable, obviously, the image, and then what we're going to talk about too is the image generator and how to get some of these tools on here on such a small footprint. Because one of the problems that we have is obviously not a lot of room. So you've got, you know, when you load the operating system, this is Chaos Calmer, and you don't have a whole lot of room left for any kind of tools after you get the operating system laid on here. So what can we do about that? So one thing that we like to do about that is build our own image, which actually is a lot easier than it sounds. There's a great wiki article out there on on OpenWart how to build it, so follow those steps. A couple of the short ones that I have for you that you're going to want to watch out for is check out the repositories file, which we're going to talk about in a second. You want to modify, this is specific to the TP-Link 3040. Obviously, you're going to want to modify the profile that's applicable to your router. And then we actually just use the make command to build it. So I know this is extremely small and hard to read.
Are we going to demo this?
Yes, we are.
Skip these to the demo.
Yeah.
So we have these slides in here because this is going to be on the miniponer.com website. So if you want to go do this afterward, you don't have to remember the demo stuff. We're going to skip through some of these demo slides to hopefully keep time for actually doing this afterwards.
Right. Yeah, the big thing is obviously make sure what we're doing is putting the correct packages in here. In this demonstration, we're using Barrier Breaker, but if you want to use any of the other ones, just make sure that they're the correct files. This is the modification of the TP-Link. The important thing to take away here, under the packages section, this is the default of what comes on it. But again, I know it's really hard to see. You'll notice at the end, we're minusing things. So we're going to take off IP tables and PPP, IP table 6, DHCP 6, things like that. Because we're not doing an IP6 assessment, we don't need these tools. We just really want a pivot point into the environment. So what we're going to do is sacrifice some of these items, save us some space, and put other tools in their place. Real quick example of a make working and failing. This is what it looks like when it succeeds on the top. It'll say completed next to the file. And then you'll see something, if you try to put too many tools on there, like say Nmap or one of the bigger tools, it'll say image too large, or image too big, technically. So it's pretty obvious, I think, if it fails.
So yeah, and why do you want to do this? This is really actually pretty cool. You know, so like this router here has 4 megabytes of internal flash. And if I download the stock OpenWrt image for it, it's under 4 megabytes, but it doesn't have any tools on it. It doesn't have TCP dump or full netcat on it. And it doesn't have a USB port, so I can't add those things like using outside storage. So this image builder lets me take that stock image, make it smaller, and then add the tools I want back to that image. And it actually, you want to add the tools you want to the image. You could install them later, but you probably run out of space. And that's because there's this really cool thing on, that it uses called SquashFS. It does some of the standard compression of the file system, but it does some other cool stuff too. Like if there's a file fragment that's smaller than a full block size, it actually puts more file fragments in that same block. So it's really, really efficient in using the size in the router. And if there's a tool that you can't install afterwards, after the image is built, you might be able to fit it on the image beforehand because of the way SquashFS works. So yeah, SquashFS is cool, is the point. And don't be afraid of building your own image.
He loves SquashFS.
I'm a lonely man.
You are? I'm in love with the router. So yeah, as we said, obviously you've got limited space. So let's see what's on there already. See what we can use. I mean, are there packages inside the OpenWrt operating system that we can utilize and work with? And if not, try to find tools with multiple purposes. Like we'll see, netcat's one of our favorite ones, right? You can use that for all kinds of different things. So speaking of netcat, these are some of my choices. Definitely want to get open SSH on there, do a lot of reverse tunnels, things like that. You can throw shells back out to yourself. Netcat, again, very useful. Can use it as a port scanner, can use it as a reverse connection into the environment. If you have the room, if you've got an outside storage, obviously that's not going to be a problem. You can throw all kinds of things on there, but mostly I like to use Nmap and TCP dump. So with those 4 tools, we pretty much can do a lot of things in the environment.
Yeah, and I was given, again, the router that didn't have any space left. And so the 2 tools I would choose there, actually chose there, TCP dump and netcat. I really love doing this because you're getting kind of back to the roots of, you know, I don't have all these fully featured tools. I have to learn to be creative with these kind of tools. And we'll show some ways you can be creative with just these 2 tools in some upcoming slides here.
So with netcat, I'm sure you guys already know all this, or you can Google it up yourselves. There's lots of cheat sheets out there, but it's just some of the favorites that I threw up. Give yourself a quick port scanner. Obviously, reverse shell is a favorite for netcat. But then also, I thought was interesting is a banner grabber for IP addresses in the environment, so you can kind of see what's running on these things before you start to attack them. This is handy.
And then here's a really cool thing. So one of the biggest challenges I came to when we started using the pentest Dropboxes was, okay, the Dropbox is on the target network. I'm out in the parking lot on a different network range, and I find a SQL server. I find some server I want to attack. I don't have a tool on the router to attack that. I don't have Metasploit on the router or something. All I need on that router to be able to attack that database on the inside from my laptop is Netcat. If you've been through like the SANS, Ed Skudis's Hacker Techniques course where he spends like 3 hours on Netcat wizardry, this is just one of those where you're using Netcat to open up 2 connections going both directions and just using that Netcat as a forwarder for traffic from the laptop through the router to the, for example, SQL database on the internal network. In this case, it was a website on the internal network as my home router or whatever. But that device on the internal network, to it looks like the traffic's coming from the local network. It's coming from the router, even though it's originating from my box. It's really pretty slick.
So again, TCP dump, a couple quick commands, and we can demo these. Actually, these should work on the internal DerbyCon network. I tested these yesterday, but so what we're doing here is a simple catching broadcast and multicast addresses so we can kind of see what's out there, right? So we're just listening on the network. The second one, we're really setting this up to be a rudimentary port scanner. So what we're going to do is we're going to catch any ICMP packets that come back to my IP address, or destined for my IP address, from something on the internal network. And then I'm just going to set up a simple bash for loop to enumerate all the different hosts on that network. And then I'm going to be able to see in my other window in TCP dump what's responding very quickly.
And the last command here is just, if you're sniffing on a wire, here's a good way to do it with TCP dump. You know, the main things here, S0 means capture the whole packet, -W means write to a file, output.bcap. Now this one's interesting too. If you've got a USB drive, you can output to that local USB drive. Another one of the tricks, and I think I show this in the afternoon talk that we'll be giving, is you can actually pipe that out through Netcat to your laptop. And so you don't need memory on the router to write that output file to. You can output it live to a remote system with TCP dump and Netcat.
Yeah, I didn't want to steal your thunder. You're welcome. So OpenSSH Nmap, I'm kind of guessing you guys are familiar with this, but set up a reverse SSH connection from a Dropbox to, and then from a local host. And just some basic Nmap commands that we like to use if you have those available.
And this is cool to highlight. I think we didn't bring up. When you drop this Dropbox, you've got 2 ways to connect back. It's got the Ethernet port that you're plugged into the target network, but it's got the wireless router that you can go in the parking lot and connect in. But you could also, if that Ethernet port gives you access to the internet through the target's network, that's where, you know, especially this OpenSSH callback can be pretty cool. It can call back and establish its own connection back to your kind of home network.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd never be doing this from home. I mean, you'd be doing it from a legitimate, authorized work environment. That's a watch. I got one too.
So Nmap.
So Nmap, we've got some real basic scans on there. I think the big takeaway of these is do the OA for catch all output. So that gives you the greppable standard Nmap and XML files. So it can be imported into different tools, so it's really handy. SN, obviously, for scanning no. So this is just going to be a ping sweep, basically. No DNS resolution for the -N. A little bit more verbose. SV obviously gives you service version information and tells you what information it's finding from different services. So that's also handy because port 80 doesn't necessarily always mean a web interface, right? So good stuff to know. And now on to the demos. And hopefully, hopefully I've made my official sacrifice the other day to the demo gods. I actually left my router that I was going to reflash at home, and I realized it like 2 days ago when I was sitting in a talk and somebody had demo fail, and I'm like, man, I hope mine doesn't fail. And then it dawned on me that I left my router back in Wisconsin.
And as evidence, we could not find anywhere in Louisville to buy a nice travel router.
Yes. So this doesn't work in all places. And we didn't check Craigslist, though.
True.
But anyway, so we got a 3040, reflashed it back to its original state. This was a mini pwner like 2 days ago.
So this is the stock firmware that comes when you open it from the box.
Yeah. So we just log into the web interface, right? 0.1. System tools, very easy to do. choose firmware, documents,
It has never been easier to be a hardware hacker.
right? Until you lose the image. And then upgrade. Of course, for sure we want to upgrade. We have read all instructions. So this only takes a couple of minutes to upgrade. It's going to reboot. Biggest problem with it rebooting is it will move away from the 0.1 and go to a 1.1 address. So something to remember. I think all OpenWrt defaults to 192.168.1.1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So yeah, we really like the TP-Link gear, like the whole line, because they're all OpenWrt compatible. They're all really easy to flash, pretty reliable from that point. I think they all have serial headers on them. I'm trying to think of other brands that have worked well for us. Certainly it's actually hard to find some of the other more, the Walmart brands are actually kind of tough to find ones that work well for OpenWrt. I don't know if we said it. So when you're in the store, when you're at Walmart trying to find your router, basically you're standing there in the aisle. You need the model number on the router in the aisle, and then you pull up the OpenWrt website, and there's a table of supported hardware. So you can look through, yeah, that one's supported, yeah, that one's not, yeah, that one's not. So that's kind of how you pick out when you're in the store, is this router going to work, is kind of, just look it up on your phone on the OpenWrt website. Any questions while Michael
You watch me type.
continues the demo?
What was the model number of the travel router that lasted like 3 days?
This is the MR13U. And I'm just looking, this one, I don't see the FCC label on it, so just FYI, you get it from China and it's not FCC approved. Whereas the 3040 that he's working on now is, many of these Chinese routers aren't. This 3020 is. There you go.
There we go.
So now we can ping. So yeah, that's the way to know it kind of worked. You ping 192.168.1.1. That's the default IP of any kind of OpenWrt router after you flash it.
Obviously, the TP-Link interface went away. You get the new OpenWrt interface. No password set. We don't need no stinking GUI. So you can telnet it to it by default. So let's change the password, and now once you change the password, you have the ability to SSH into it. Well, we'll see that not a lot of space on here. If you look at Netcat, this is the BusyBax version of Netcat. There is no TCP dump on this particular box right now. So now for the fun demo.
Yeah. So normally now at that point you would do so normally if you've got the space now you would do if you want to install those tools you would connect your router to the internet. There's how-tos to do that, configure their Wi-Fi or whatever, get on your Wi-Fi. And then you do the tool's called OPackage, OPKG. So you do an OPackage update, which pulls all the list of packages you can install down, and then you OPackage install Netcat, OPackage install TCP dump. It'll install those things right to the flash that's remaining.
So this is the repository file. It's a little bit.
So what Michael's going to
large.
show now is building that custom firmware. Where we said, okay, we need to remove some of these, we need more space, and we want to add some tools to the firmware. This is a step-by-step to do that, right? Okay.
You've given your talk this afternoon.
Fun.
All right, so yes, this is the package generator tool. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and downloaded it. It's about 80 megs, so you probably want a decent internet connection when you do this. Did it yesterday here, actually, at the conference. It probably took about 10 minutes, so it's not too bad. But it comes obviously in a bzip file. Extract that. You get all the files that you need. If you take a look at the repository file, all these files were not, all this information right here was not in the file yesterday. I added this in manually. And you can actually find this on the OpenWrt tutorial wiki page on how to do this. basically it's just all the source, barrier breaker, whatever the sub-package name is, and then obviously the URL to where it actually is. These obviously will change if you're using Chaos Comma or attitude adjustment or anything like that.
Yeah, when I used the Chaos Comma package builder, it was already in there correctly, so I think barrier breaker was the weird one.
Yeah. So I've already done that. The other file that you want to edit is the, where is it? Targets links. AR71 for our architecture type. And in here, profiles. So these are all the different profiles that it comes with out of the box. If we take a look at the backup file, if you search through here for 3040, you'll notice under the package section, it only comes really with bare minimum USB stuff built in.
There's another generic template file elsewhere that has all the other packages that all the images would have, but this one, because not every router has USB, they only add the USB stuff to the routers that have USB, stuff like that.
So for the edited version, I left all the USB stuff in there because maybe I'll get lucky and, you know, I've got one with USB, so I could put a USB chip in it. But I've added TCP dump, well, Nmap, but we'll see that's going to fail, netcat. And for subtracting packages, it's just as easy as putting a dash in front of it, so you actually just want to subtract that package. You can subtract any packages that are in the base image for all the different routers. So.
Did you spell firewall incorrectly?
Maybe. Damn, you're picky. Every day.
And if you spell firewall incorrectly, it won't work either.
All right, you happy?
Yes.
Anything else I can do for you?
No.
All right.
Do the demo,
Can I?
please.
Thanks for letting me. All right, so this is going to fail because I added in Nmap in there. We know that's going to be too big of a package, but we're going to go ahead and go make profile, oops, TL MR 3040,
Make image.
make image. I really do this for a living, which is scary.
Yeah. And we really wanted to highlight the image builder here. I've started building OpenWrt routers like this, like with the Mini-Pwner project, you know, back in 2012. And I didn't actually use the image builder until like 2 months ago when we were prepping for this talk, because I was kind of scared of it. Like, well, I don't want to build images and it looks complicated to do. And it's like, this is crazy. Why wasn't I doing this years ago? Because it's so simple. You know, in addition to being able to add or remove packages, you can add or remove or change files as well through it. You just say, I don't want this file that's on there. I want my own config file, and here's the contents of it. And it's just almost trivial to tell the image builder to use your file instead of the one that's on there.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see, obviously, error image too large, right? So go back in and we'll get rid of the Nmap package. Oops, not capitalized.
Is that part of the profile? The profile knows how much space is available on the device?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure where it is. I've never looked, but yeah, it knows that 3040, that the maximum image size is the, and actually not even the maximum image size. It knows the image size when I create image needs to be exactly this. So if it ends up smaller, it'll pad it. So one of the things we may see is that the file name, when it creates the image file, is going to be the same size even if it's got different packages in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so go ahead and make that again. This time, hopefully it will succeed and we'll have no demo fail.
One thing that I never figured out when I was doing this is I would run the make and it would fail, and I forget what the error was. I'd just run it again immediately and it would work. And I think there's maybe something out of order where it was trying to download packages after it was trying to include them or something. So if things are weird, just run it a few times over just to make sure that's not the problem you're having.
So we see the firmware actually completed this time, and it made all the binaries for us. So that's good. They are in here. One thing you'll notice, it creates them all. So kind of overkill, but it is doing it in under an hour, so we don't really take the time to strip all that away. I mean, if we figure you're buying a router, you're downloading all these image builders, you're stripping out packages, putting more packages in, and getting it in there. We're trying to do it as quickly as possible. But if we take a look, here are images, and you'll notice that the standard factory squash image is 3.8 megs, which is what it always should be. If you look at it from a byte standpoint, it's always exactly the same as well. So what I can do is copy this. Isn't it fun watching people type at conferences?
You can try to flash it.
Yes, I was.
All right. So we're going to show you now how we move this over. So the router's already been flashed once. So we want to put this new firmware on it. And so the way we do that is we're going to use Netcat to move it from one place to another. Let me know if I'm getting ahead of you, or you want to do this. Sorry.
No, that's
All
fine.
right.
I mean, you've done it this far, so.
So here we want to make a Netcat listener. So it's NC.
Want to type?
No.
Sure.
Dash L for listen, space dash P for port. Michael's favorite port. Less than. File name. Less than asshole.
All right.
All right. So now his laptop is listening for connections. Once it gets one, it's just going to dump that file to it. Netcat's cool.
It's awesome. All right. So now we're in the router itself. You're going to want to go into temp, or at least redirect it to temp, because that's where all your space is right now. It's got these little routers, at least the 3040, has got 16 megs
of RAM and 4 megs of flash.
Yes. So you can store, it's big enough to store stuff on there in temporary standpoint, so as long as you don't reboot it, power it off, you're going to be fine. Let's see, I think I was .40, right? Yep, okay.
Okay, port.
You can really just name it whatever you like.
And because they both quit, it means they actually establish a connection and actually move the file. You should see that image.bin, the same size.
Yeah, you'll notice, like Kevin just said, obviously, it exited out Netcat on both sides, so it'll tell you that it's finished. And then this is probably the biggest part that people get confused on or scared about. But it's just MTD and then space, whatever image that you want to put on there, and then firmware. So it's going to take that image file and I'm going to write it to firmware. So reflashing one of these things is not very difficult. And if you were to brick this and it didn't work very well, like some of the ones that I've done in the past, that's what the serial interface is really good for. So you can get to it from a serial perspective and then get that new image uploaded onto the router and do the same thing. Wait for it. All right. Should be rebooting itself.
I think you have to reboot.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So now we just created our own custom firmware with TCP dump and netcat on it. Copied it over the router, flashed the router. Now we're hoping it comes up and we might be able to use those tools.
Maybe.
Or we might have demo fail.
Right.
Woohoo!
I'm hoping the demo guys are still sleeping. So since we just flashed it, we do have to tell that back into it. So we can do netcat, but now you'll see it's not the BusyBox version. It's the full version of netcat. And we also have TCP dump installed. Yay, no demo fail. Hopefully it's up the path for the rest of the day. But
So if we can do it in 15 minutes at the end of a talk, you can do it at home. Do not be afraid.
yeah, very easy,
And the routers are cheap, so do not be afraid.
right?
And if you break it, you'll learn more by serial flashing it, so do
It's
not
true.
be afraid.
Right. If you don't know how to solder, you'll learn how to do that too. Be afraid. I mean, don't be afraid. We are, yes, I think, well, hang on, let me, just
Slide. Sorry.
oh,
We're going to lose Michael.
look, question, right there.
Okay. Questions? Cool. Thank you, guys.
Sir, hey, we got a question. Wait, hey. What?
For your comments, IP tables masquerade as your friend in terms of using the Wi-Fi network to fit it into the.
Yes.
That's what I think you definitely want to do that. I've used some OpenVPN for Xbill, and when you combine that with IP tables masquerade, again, you can sit in your office
Mm-hmm.
and be an endpoint on their network. If you can get out the internet, you can drop off. So
Yep.
IP tables is really
Yep, no, that's a very good observation. Thank you.
So yeah, the note was, if people can hear it, IP tables masquerade is helpful. So we took it off just to save space, but you can use that to pivot your network instead of the netcat, and the VPN, using a VPN tool to do that can be helpful as well.
We actually have some new software coming out. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but for this afternoon's talk, we'll be talking about the Mini Poner project, and we do have some new modules coming out which will have kind of the reverse stuff built in. So it'll be a lot easier to do that exact thing. There's a question over here. Yes, sir.
So I haven't played with DDWT or Tomato. I hear they're cool. I just always started with OpenWrt. I think there's the tool set on OpenWrt is pretty good. I don't know how wide it is on those other tools. That does bring up another comment. If you guys aren't aware, the FCC has a bulletin out for comment at this point where they're going to be requiring manufacturers to prevent us from being able to flash our routers. So if you Google for save Wi-Fi, you can get involved to send a letter to the FCC to say that's a really stupid idea. We want to be able to flash the equipment we buy.
Yes.
So be aware of that as well.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah, that's a very good point. Please make sure you do that.
In your demo, you guys flashed the firmware once from the original stock firmware using their interface, and then again from the what was the point of flashing it twice?
Okay.
So the question was, if I understand correctly, how do we flash it twice? So
Right.
why did we flash it twice, or how? Why did we flash it twice? So we could have done it once, yes. We wanted to demonstrate how easy it is to reflash a device. We could have built the package correctly the first time and uploaded it via the web interface and flashed it just once. Yes, that would have certainly been a valid option.
But you have to kind of know how to do both. The first time you get the router, you have to do it through the web interface. That's your only choice. After you've done it once, you have to do it through the command line. That's your only choice.
Right. Yeah, so we just wanted.
It's not a critical step in this process.
No. Exactly. Yeah. Sir.
So hopefully we won't have like infinite time, like do you have a preferred model?
I really enjoy the 3040. It's small, it's compact, it's got the battery built in. The only limitation I really find is it's got one USB port. So if you expand the memory through a USB drive on it, obviously then you can't put like a 4G dongle on it or something like that. So, and also obviously one Ethernet port, but that's never really been a problem for me. This guy is really nice. It looks big, but it's very thin. So we actually had really good success sticking it behind things or underneath like that gap between your desktop and your drawer, your filing cabinet. It fits almost perfectly, at least in our office. And then you can do like man-in-the-middle stuff. So you only have one network port, maybe for an IP phone or another machine there. You can plug it into here and plug this into the wall, and then hopefully they're none the wiser, right? So
The only other one I would highlight, this little Nex 3020. It's got 2 Ethernet ports. That's sweet. You can like run sniff traffic through it. It's actually got 8 meg of flash, so you've got twice as much flash space. You can actually put a few more packages on it before you run out of flash. It has the USB port, so you can add something. And they're like, I think, $19 from China shipped. So it's an awesome little router.
it is great, yeah. If you have the time,
No battery, though.
right? If you have the time to get one from China, absolutely, those little things are great.
But yeah, the TP links, both the models Michael showed you were at Fry's and I believe at Micro Center.
Yeah. Actually, I think I picked this one up at Fry's, but then there was a comparable model at was it Target? I think I went to, but it didn't have the USB. So I ended up getting the USB version from Fry's instead. Any other questions, comments?
Probably right on our time here.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.